Let me bring in my panel. Chris Wilson, a Republican pollster and CEO of WPA Intelligence. Chris Kofinas is a Democratic strategist and former chief of staff for Senator Joe Manchin. Glenn Kirshner is a former federal prosecutor, and Jill Wine-Banks, a former assistant Watergate special prosecutor. Great to see all of you. Jill, you have made it clear you don't support Kavanaugh. So make the case. What do you expect to hear from Democrats tomorrow?
Well, I'm hoping that they will ask questions that will show how he has disrespected precedent. He has frequently been criticized by his colleagues on the bench in their written opinions, both on the left and the right, for having ignored precedent, for having driven decisions that he raises issues that haven't been raised by the parties, but that go to something that he wants to accomplish. And those are things that are not good in a Supreme Court justice where it is the final decision. No one gets to review it. So we want to make sure that those kind of questions are asked and that we find out why we can't have all the documents so that we can see them.
Could this just be legit?
I don't know.
Could it just be that, you know, these are things that go on between a president and people who are close to him, and they have to be able to be protected?
It is possible that there will be some privilege involved in them. I don't know, but we have a right to know. And until the documents are produced by the archives, which is not until October, according to the archives, and I'm not even sure that that's really true. I wonder that if the government really wanted to produce them, they couldn't make the all-out effort and put enough people on it so that those documents could be produced and that the members of the committee could look at them. Then we would know, and we have a right to know what's in those documents. The Republicans insisted during Justice Kagan's confirmation hearings that all of her documents be produced. Why are they changing the rules now? It's because that's what the Republicans have done on all of these issues.
Well, Chris Kofinas, we heard Joe Biden just saying, listen, Democrats, stay in the room, demand answers, but look, the conventional wisdom is this nomination is going to go through. He will be confirmed. So what can the Democrats achieve tomorrow?
Well, I think I'm not sure if the conventional wisdom is going to go through is true or not.
I think Kavanaugh could be blocked?
I mean, realistically, if you look at simply by math, yes, he's going to pass. But if you look at it in terms of, I think, the political and reality of what you could do in these hearings, which is point out and exploit the fact of his positions and decisions when it comes to women's rights, workers' rights, minority rights, healthcare issues, things that really matter to everyday Americans, then you start maybe having a little bit of weakness amongst, you know, some key Republicans, like a Susan Collins or a Lisa Murkowski. You have to have at least, obviously, one Republican crack under the pressure of saying that this guy is not qualified. If that doesn't happen, you're right, conventional wisdom, it goes through, and then it's a different calculation. But I'm not sure that anyone on the Democratic side is willing to just move on and say, yes, it's over before it even began.
Well, I wonder, Chris Wilson, do you think that the administration shot itself or shot Republicans in the foot with this last-minute decision? I guess the Friday night document massacre is the way that the minority leader put it, by sort of handing the Democrats another thing to go after him with.
No, I don't think so. It's like the Chris show today. I was like, so am I up next?
Yeah, Chris Wilson.
Yeah. From a standpoint of what's going on here, I mean, this is just performance theater at this point. No one is arguing that Kavanaugh is not qualified to be on the Supreme Court. What they're trying to do is they're hoping there's some sort of a silver bullet or some sort of gaffe that happens. And look, Republicans and the administration has already turned over 500,000 documents. So it's not as if there's been a lack of documents that have been turned over regarding Kavanaugh. I think the bigger issue here, and this is where I'd be interested in Chris Kofinas' attitude, is what happens with Joe Manchin? What happens with these senators, Democrat senators are in Trump states in which we have produced data, WP Intelligence, that shows that they could lose their election based on this vote. So how does he vote on it? How does Claire McCaskill vote? How does John Tester vote? How does Heidi Heitkamp vote? That's going to be what's really interesting to watch over the next few days. Not whether or not he's going to get confirmed. He's going to be confirmed. This is anything else is just playing to the Democratic base here. But what happens with these Democrat senators that are in challenging re-election fights? And do they come and vote for Kavanaugh? Because if they don't, it could cost them their seat in the Senate.
Well, I want to get Glenn in here because I think that, you know, he's generally considered, Brett Kavanaugh, to be an incredibly smart guy, incredibly accomplished. As Jeff Bennett pointed out, he seems to have in some ways been training for this, maybe since he was a teenager. Look, there is an argument to be made that the President of the United States ran on this. He ran on the Supreme Court. He told those crowds over and over and over again, this is the kind of person that I am going to put on the Supreme Court. He already did it once. He's going to do it, he thinks, a second time. So what argument can you make?
Well, Chris, I don't think it comes as a surprise to anyone that the president has made good on his promise to nominate a sort of an ideologically conservative person and judge to be the next justice. And, you know, I agree with Jill that one of the most important qualities in a justice is sort of faith and allegiance to the law, not to be sort of interventionist. And, you know, faith and allegiance to the law means both faith to the precedent of the Supreme Court and to the Constitution. And I know we were all keenly interested when we heard that Judge Kavanaugh had articulated that he didn't think a sitting president should be investigated or indicted.
Well, let me read something that he wrote to that point in 2009. Congress might consider a law exempting a president while in office from criminal prosecution and investigation, including from questioning by criminal prosecutors or defense counsel. Criminal investigations targeted at or revolving around a president are inevitably politicized by both their supporters and critics. What are we going to hear about that tomorrow?
So we'll probably hear quite a bit, and I know that these confirmation hearings often sort of involve nominees trying to artfully dodge questions. Let's hope that we have a full and fair discussion about it tomorrow. But I think there are two important takeaways, Chris, from that statement you just read. One, Judge Kavanaugh, this was in academic writings and statements. They weren't in judicial opinions. But even more importantly, if Judge Kavanaugh said that Congress should consider passing a law to protect the president in this way, then what we can infer from that is that the Constitution provides no such protection. And that, I think, is an important point because Congress has not passed the law to so protect the president. So if Judge Kavanaugh is going to be intellectually honest, and I have no reason to believe he won't be, then his position should be the Constitution does not protect a sitting president from a criminal investigation or an indictment.
Jill, I want to play part of what Kavanaugh himself said back in 2015 about the possible question of how would he fare as a Supreme Court justice in the era of Donald Trump. Here's what he said.
Sometimes there's even working the ref before the game is played, working the judge before the game with tweets and blog posts and trying to put implicit or sometimes explicit pressure on judges. We have to tune that out. We have to tune out the crowd noise. We can't be buffaloed, influenced, pressured into worrying too much about transient popularity when we're trying to decide a case based on long-term principle.
So should that give people encouragement who are concerned about Judge Kavanaugh? Do you buy it, Jill?
I don't, and I don't think it gives me any comfort. I think we need to have a full and fair hearing, as was just said. That would give us some real understanding of him. But I think that his judicial record shows that he does not abide by that, that when he has a principle in mind, he goes after it, whether the parties have raised the issue or not. And that is of concern because I think we do need impartiality and no prejudgment. And Judge Kavanaugh has already prejudged so many issues. He has expanded on them. And of course, the issue about whether a president can be investigated leads to my thinking that he should have to recuse himself in any case involving Donald Trump, because of what he has already expressed as his opinion on the issue, and because he's being appointed by that very person, possibly for that very reason. Maybe that's the reason that he, out of all the possibly qualified people, and when we say qualified, of course he has intellect. That does not mean that he meets all of the criteria for a Supreme Court justice, which would include some attention to equity and to fairness.
Jill Wine-Banks, Glenn Kirshner, thanks to both of you. Chris Wilson, Chris Kofinas, you're going to stay with us. The three Chris's will be here throughout the hour.